Well, welcome to the Shepherd Heart of Leader podcast, where we explore topics that help strengthen your ability to care for those under your leadership. Now, today I'm really excited about the conversation as I have two of my daughter-in-laws on the podcast, and we're going to talk about when family is in ministry. So this is going to be a great conversation. We're so excited for you to hear it. So we've got Camrey. Camrey has been married to Jeff for 7 years, almost 7 years, and her and Jeff lead the location at Maple Grove. So location pastors, Jeff's the pastor, not like you're serve alongside, and then you also oversee the Early childhood.
Ministry.
Okay.
Yep.
And then Chy, she's been married to Tim, our son Tim, for 4 years. And she is a pastor in the kids ministry, serving in the central team. And then you also speak. So welcome to the podcast. So I gave a little bit of introduction. Tell a little bit about your family. Camrey, we'll start with you.
Yeah.
And anything else you might want to add.
Yeah. I have two littles at home, Kevin, who's 5, and Josie, who is 2, going to be 3. And they're a lot of fun. They keep me on my toes. Like Jody had said, I'm also the early childhood coordinator. So between Jeff and I's schedule, we live kind of a busy season of life right now. But it's fun. We enjoy it a lot. So I feel like that's pretty much a wrap of what we're at right now.
Chy?
Yeah, and I've been on staff here for the last 4 years, and I don't know how we missed every other year, but we realized that this year I started at Emmanuel a month before getting married, and so it was a big season of change for us, but this year we got to welcome our newest member to the family, which is Sophie, and so it's been fun just learning what it means to be parents.
Yeah, so it's so fun. It's fun being grandparents to your kids. I'll say that for sure. So growing up, I was not in ministry. My family wasn't in ministry, and we actually had, quite the background where my parents weren't saved until I was 12 years old and all the things. And so when I met Nate and married into his family and even started dating him, it was a pretty big difference. From going to church sometimes as a kid to wow, I remember being at their family's house in Michigan, going on vacation. I'm like, did these guys ever skip church? And his parents were pastors when he was young, but at this point they were deacons and elders in the church. And so they had a huge leadership role. And I'm like, we're out visiting them and they're gone almost every night of the week. And I'm like, hey, Nate, do you think your parents could maybe skip one of the Connect group meetings so they can hang out with us while we're here? So it was quite a contrast from what I grew up. And so I know you two both married into ministry. And so what's been the experience for you?
Go ahead.
Yeah, for me, my parents are first generation believers, so they weren't really given this baton of faith or even this is how you raise kids in a Christian home. So as a family, the cool thing about it is we got to learn what it meant to follow Jesus together. And so once they were radically saved, they were like, we're not missing church. So that's a really good parallel to my lifestyle now, but I could count on one hand when we missed church as a family. But we got to learn and grow together when it came to ministry. But yeah, they relied heavily upon the church leaders to give them guidance and mentorship, and they prayed a lot. And now I'm in full-time ministry, and so is my sister. So for parents, just getting to know who Jesus is in their 30s and then raising their household the best that they could. Now they have 2 daughters who are in ministry. So that's a little bit of our background.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And I grew up in a Christian family. We went to church every weekend. And there were seasons where we went to different churches. My dad actually grew up at Emmanuel. And so there was a long season where we weren't at Emmanuel, but I actually came back to Emmanuel in high school. And because my dad had such great memories of being in the youth group when he was in high school. And so he really wanted my sister and I to have the same experience. And we did. And it was one of the sweetest times. We rarely missed church on a Sunday. We went to, Wednesday nights and then Sundays, and it was different marrying into ministry, being a part of going to church and being living ministry, I would say is different. Both have its pros and cons, I'm sure, but it was a different season of learning how to go through ministry is different. So we go through, there might be Monday nights or there might be Tuesday nights. Okay, so if that's where we're going to be, then where do we have that family time? It's just a different sense of balance, if you will. But that's kind of a little bit about my background with ministry and church and stuff.
So now both of you are going to come from a little bit different perspective. Chy is a pastor on staff and married to Timmy, who's a pastor's kid, no longer a kid, but a pastor's kid who's an adult. And then you you're not on staff. You are on staff actually, but not technically a pastor on staff, but married to a pastor on staff. And so you're both going to have some really unique perspectives when it comes to family things. So when you married into the Ruch family, like what was the biggest surprise as far as ministry goes? I mean, I'm sure there's lots of surprises, but looking at each other going, who's going first?
Cam can speak to it because she's been in this longer, but I think when I started dating Timmy, I didn't understand the weight of the last name. And so when you get married, you represent whatever last name you choose. But when it comes to the Ruches, I think people saw the legacy. And so they saw, hey, I grew up in JC's place and that's where I got saved, or Nate mentored me, or Emmanuel has helped my family. And so that was really the weight that we were stepping into, or I was stepping into, was the legacy that was built upon that name. And so it really redefined for me as wanting to become a pastor. It defined for me, what does ministry look like? And it's not on a Sunday, as Camrey was saying, you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday responsibilities too. But it's also when you get to meet that person in Target or in a parking lot, it's listening and hearing those stories and showing up and supporting others. So there was a lot to learn while I stepped into marrying into the Ruches, but it helped me with, my job today.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, similar. Jeff and I started dating when I was 16. So, and you and Nate were already senior pastors here. And so it's a little different. I think sometimes ignorance is bliss, and being that young, I think I had more ignorance at that point. But we would go for walks around the church and there were lots of eyes on us all the time. Or opinions of what we should be doing or where we should be going, or you're going to be a pastor, just like your dad. And although there's such sweet comments and mean nothing by that, you walk into what that is. As I got older, I think I just learned early on who I am and who God's made me to be, because if I didn't, I, at that time, was very much a perfectionist. And so, coming into a legacy with what that Ruch name means, there's that initial piece of oh my gosh, I have to be perfect, or I have to have it all together, or I need to be the best dressed, or whatever. Especially when you're 16. As I got older, I cared less and less of what the masses thought and cared more about my inner circle of, do my family members or you and Nate have, do I have that ear of, being my true self? And as long as you guys are okay with it, then that's enough. And it only got more and more interesting as we got married. And then it was, okay, you're going to be pastors at Elk River. You're following the Ruch name. And which is true. There's a lot of legacy that comes with it, and it's not bad. I think it's incredibly cool how God can change storylines, and how Nate's great-grandpa became a pastor, and how that's dramatically changed down the family line. And I think it's really, really great. But I think there's individuality in that piece too, and we just had to learn how to do that while still being ourselves. But there was weight that came with it, and we had to figure it out. But I think we figured out how to be ourselves with what God wanted us to do, and then let everything kind of just fly off the back a little bit. But
So how does it feel with you, with Timmy? Do you feel like people are hey, nudging him to being a pastor and those kind of things? What kind of pressure comes with that?
Yeah, I feel like he could talk about this more, but I think the expectation on him now as a pastor's husband, which we don't really get to see as much, is that he should be showing up, that he should be like co-laboring with me, like how you show up.
Yeah.
And things are different when it comes to him. I mean, he doesn't work in ministry. He has a full-time job outside of it. So he's had to learn how to set boundaries too, not only being a pastor's kid, but also now being a pastor's husband and what he can say yes to. And I think the big thing is to not do anything out of obligation. And I think that's something that we've learned is we're going to be asked to keep serving, and we're going to want to keep showing up. But if we keep holding like the expectations of what other people set upon us, then it's just going to keep being out of obligation and being out of, well, what are they going to think if we don't show up, or if we don't make sure that we get to connect with them. And so we've just learned to do it out of the overflow of our hearts.
So pressure, let's talk about pressure. Where have you felt the pressure, even if it includes us, Nate and I? You're like both going, what can I say? Just go for it. Pressure from people, pressure from family.
Yeah, I would say because we did, Jeff and I started dating when you guys were youth or senior pastors early on. I think the pressure was there immediately. And so then you jump to us getting married, and it's a different line of pressure. And similar to what Chy was saying of like, you don't want to do things out of obligation, but you still have to, where's the line between your job and like your job as a family? Because your first ministry is your family. Yep. And if you can't do that, then everything else from that flows differently. And so we just... we had a lot of really wise counsel from different people that were just like, what did you do? Because we don't have to figure this out on our own, especially when we have people around us who can give us wise advice. Because at this point, we want to do things well, but people around our age aren't in these positions. And so how do we handle these? And we just learned that Jeff and I need to be on the same page first. Mm-hmm. And if we're not on the same page, then we're still not doing it right. There are seasons for saying yes to things. But before we go into a season of saying yes to things, we make sure we rest and like have family time, especially if we know like we plan our calendar sometimes 3 months in advance. And like if we can see a trend of lots of yeses, then we make sure we have lots of family time before, because that eases the clarity of where the pressure is supposed to be and where it's not supposed to be. And then we do the same thing following a busy season. And that kind of keeps us in line of where obligation and where our no's should be. And sometimes you ruffle some feathers, and that's just what happens. But you have to be okay with that, because everyone's limits are different. Yep. And different seasons are different too. I mean, there were seasons where my limits were really small, and I had to be okay with saying no more often. And there were times where I had lots bigger limits to where I could say yes to a lot of things before I could say no. And I had to be okay with that too. So that's kind of us a little bit.
Yeah, I think going back to the perfectionism, I think this isn't really an expectation that people put on you, but more what we put on ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think stepping into the Ruch family, like you get to see that people do put you in the spotlight, not saying that they're expecting perfection, but everything that you do is going to be seen. And so I think subconsciously we've tried to strive for it. And that's where the Holy Spirit just reminds us that we're still figuring it out. Mm-hmm. And, as we enter being parents, like we're not going to have it all together. And so just making sure that we're transparent, that we're just people. Mm-hmm. We're people that God chose to use and to be put in a position to lead others, but we're still trying to figure it out as well.
So one of the things that's unique is like all of us are pretty involved at Emmanuel. I work at Emmanuel, and we can get to family functions and start talking about Emmanuel, mm-hmm. or phone calls or things like that. And so we've set some boundaries, like maybe speak to that, how we've done some boundaries here. She's like, put me out. Call me out.
No. It's good. No, I think the heart of it is we want to make sure that we protect our relationships. And so for me, I value being able to be transparent in all areas with you guys when it comes to work and when it comes to family, but setting boundaries like, hey, if it's work related, can you use our work systems? So Outlook when it comes to email, or Teams when it comes to messages. And then when it comes to family things like, hey, you want to hang out? Hey, can you babysit our kids? Then can you text me? And I've just set those boundaries so then it can be more healthier ways of communication. So you know that if I'm texting you, I want to talk to you as a family member, and if I'm messaging you, it's work related.
Oh, that was good. Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Camrey?
Yeah, so this isn't like my first space of working for family. My dad is a small business owner, and I worked at his business for 6 years. And so, it's my dad, my mom, my sister, my uncle.
So you get the family business thing.
I got the family business thing. Ministry is different, but similar things where you all have similar interactions during the day. And so you may want to debrief some when you're not working because you don't have the same people in the room, and you want to debrief as family of like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or how could I have said that differently, or how can I work on this, or whatever. So I think, and being young when we joined the family or whatever, I think I just understood that this is your life too. And like we're in our own homes. We want to be able to debrief for a second. There is a line when it's like, okay, now we're nitpicking every little line. I mean, we can be guilty of the same thing. And kind of establishing like, oh, okay, it's over my head. I'm over this conversation. I get it, but I think we're getting a little into the weeds. Like, let's maybe pick this up at work, or is this something that we can talk about at work? But just kind of setting the boundaries of like, okay, you're debriefing your perspective of the situation because this is your life too, and we all have similar interactions. And now we're going into work mode, and we're checking boxes, and we're emailing, and we're having work conversations that would typically be, meetings at church or at work. Is kind of how we've set those boundaries a little bit.
Yep. And Nate makes it very clear that this isn't a family business. It's a church that happens to employ some of the family.
Yeah.
But I think the achiever in me can get a little guilty of going, oh, I see Chy. Hey, Chy, and ask about sisterhood things and things like that. So really establishing a boundary was healthy and good. And then we've got 4 daughter-in-laws, so you guys are 2 of them.
Yep.
But some of the other daughter-in-laws have had hard conversations too, saying, hey, when you guys talk about church, we don't know these people. Please, can we talk about something different? And so really being able to turn it off and just be family is super important, and takes some intentionality. So let's talk about privacy. Like when you jump into ministry, talk about privacy for yourself, for kids. How has that gone? We'll start with you, Chy.
Yeah, I mean, I think social media has been such a great outlet to stay connected. I mean, my family lives in Illinois, and being based here in Minnesota, it gives them an opportunity to get to see what they're missing out on. But I do think that there is hesitation when it comes to, or just mindfulness when it comes to posting family milestones or child events like, hey, Sophie's now 5 months. And I think that there's just a mindfulness that you have to have when you are in a ministry family, that people will get to know your family through what you post. And that's a great thing because now they get to see you outside of a Sunday or outside of a Wednesday, where they get to see, oh, they go to soccer games or they shop at the same store that I do. And so there's a way that they get to see that we are just people. But there's also, like I said, a mindfulness that we have to have, that people are still watching and that there is a spotlight. I mean, I'm just starting into the parent stage, so we're still in this discussion of what do we post, what don't we post, and Timmy and I have to be on the same page when it comes to that. But I know you have older kids and have been at this way longer than I have been, so you probably have more to say on it.
I would say it's kind of like a personal question, like not personal for me, but like everyone's perspective is different. Social media can be great, like you said, like having that ability to connect with family members who don't live in the state. I mean, my mom's side of the family all live in Indiana. And so there is that, like, how do we share our real life? Because typically on a Sunday, we are hosting a service. We want to interact with as many people as we possibly can, but we also can't interact with everybody. But there's also that fight to let's overshare on like Instagram or whatever, so that people can know me outside of church. And I would say, as far as like my privacy or like my husband's, Jeff, we care a lot less about ours, because what we choose to post, we know what we're posting. With our kids, it's very different. We want people to know our kids through us, not through a computer. And this is just our perspective. Early on, when Kevin was less than a year old, we would come, because at that point we were at Elk River. And so we would come to Spring Lake Park for certain events or whichever. And we would have people that we didn't know coming up to us and touching our kid and like trying to talk to them. And like for me, that was kind of like the first, and they meant no harm by it, but that was kind of like the first interaction of like, okay, we got to be mindful because people are watching my kids. And how do we chose this role in ministry, our kids didn't, and they don't even know what this world is yet. And that's our job as parents, to protect that. I think as they get older, it's a constant reevaluating situation. But with them being this young and us realizing how many eyes are on our kids sometimes, we just choose to post less about our kids. We share them because they're our kids and we want people to know we have kids. But you might get a half picture of them to see that they're present in that memory. But we want people to know our kids through us. We spend a lot of time going out to lunch with people, or doing church gatherings at church where people can spend time with our kids. And like, we're not scared of people knowing our kids, but there is that you're putting out for the whole world to see, and who's watching our kids. So that's just kind of the season that we're in. It may change, but it kind of is a constant evaluating season. But
it's like back in the day, people would watch the front row. So if your kids were next to you in church, they would watch from maybe the balcony and say, wow, I saw your child. He was raising his hands to the Lord. And you're like, you're watching our kid. Or that was so cute that he hugged you. And I'm like, oh, wow. Or as the kids got older, they'd be in youth group and people would send us pictures. Look at, they're worshiping Jesus and stuff. So, the eyes really are on the kids, whether, we like it or not. I think people do mean well. Most of the time they want to celebrate. Sometimes in the past, I won't say like currently because I don't have any kids in the home, but it would be staff. They could feel like we're making a difference. See, check out how your kids are doing or whatever. So that was a little bit interesting at times. But now with social media, it is a completely different thing. So you got the privacy for your kids. How about like in messages? So like when Chy would you share about your daughter, and how do you feel like when Jeff shares about your kids or Papa shares about your kids?
Yeah. So Nate kind of started the, the tradition, if you will, of asking his kids, hey, I'm going to share this. Are you okay with it? And so we've kind of adapted that in our family. Jeff recently spoke on a Sunday and had asked Kevin, hey, I want to share a little bit about you in this picture. Is that okay? And he was like, yes! Like, he was so excited. And so that's where it's changing a little bit, because he's aware, okay, people at Maple Grove are going to see this. I'm okay with that. Or no, I don't want people to see that. We don't share a whole lot about Josie yet, just because it's the Wild West with 2-year-old at the moment.
Wild West.
But they're part of our family, so we still may generically mention them. We want people to know that we have kids and what our life really is. But yeah, we kind of go about just the same way of just like, hey, are you okay with this? And Papa says the same thing with our kids or with Jeff. And I think it's a line of respect that, although sometimes isn't always needed because they're funny stories or whatever, it's a good way just to always have that in place. It's a safeguard, if you will, because then you started when it was easy, and now it's not abnormal as they get older too.
Yeah. No, I would just say the same. I mean, as Sophie grows up, we're going to probably do this similar thing of just asking permission. I mean, I've gotten to see that with Timmy, that I can't always just share what I think is okay. But, that comes with time. That comes with learning to ask permission first. So you're not apologizing later.
Yeah, because you can't take it back once it's out.
Absolutely.
Can't, like, it's like the feathers in a pillow that go all over. Once they're in the wind, you can't pick it up. When I spoke on Mother's Day, I included a picture of you guys, you ladies, I should say guys, right? And a little quick story, but I ran it by each one and got permission ahead of time, even which picture is okay. So what's been the coolest thing you've experienced being in ministry that maybe you wouldn't have experienced any other way?
Go for it.
I think not having my family based here, ministry has given me an extended family. And I feel like, Sophie has so many aunties and uncles now. I also think the really unique thing about being in a ministry family is, although you can set boundaries when it comes to family time and work time, it's going to be enmeshed. And so we've had moments where I've shared in a family setting with you guys, this is what Timmy and I are walking through. And immediately your heart goes to, let's pray about it. And so there's always this constant lifestyle of being in ministry. And really all that is just being a Christian household, following Jesus together. And so that's one thing that has really opened my eyes, is this is always a safe place, but no, like, there is spiritual depth always within family time too.
Yeah, I would say similar with my mom's side of the family living in Indiana. We have a small family here. And initially being in ministry was really overwhelming because I felt like I got like hundreds of family members like really fast. And I was like, I don't know how to have relationships with each one of you. And I don't want you to be offended if I don't have time to talk to you and I talk to you. And how do I manage this? But it quickly changed to it's so cool when you become a Christian, but then when you step further and you work in ministry, yes, it has its challenges, but you gain this godlike family who shares the same values, who has different limits and different priorities, but at the same time, you all come to the same point. And so we just learned like that was really cool. We're all people and we're all trying to follow Jesus the best that we can. And it's given us, in some ways, aunts and uncles or grandparents, I'm walking through, like, how did you handle this? And like, they worked in ministry. They can tell me how they've handled it. Whereas working in ministry, I don't know if I would have gotten that same side. Yes, you get the opinions, but I think that's where you stay close to Jesus and you kind of evaluate, okay, which ones roll off my back and which ones, nope, I need to hear this one. So I think it's been a really cool experience.
Yeah, I started out talking about going to the Ruches and going, hey, will you guys ever like take a connect group off so you can hang out with us? And I realized how much it means to pour into people's lives, so I'm not as worried. And they did actually kind of chill a little bit and spend time with us when we went out there. But it's been fun being in ministry for a long term and watching the fruit. Like yesterday, Nate sent me an email that someone who had been in the youth ministry back in the day of JC's place just talked to him and thanked him for the difference that he made. And then he talked about how his life changed, how his wife's life changed, how they're pouring into other people and mentoring other people, and just like, thank you for starting us on the right trajectory. So being in ministry, I mean, it's got its challenges, but it also has its fruit, which makes it so exciting. So there comes a lot of expectations, personal expectations, family expectations. How do you guys deal with those expectations? I mean, maybe we touched on it a little bit, but let's circle back to do that.
I would say with the expectations,
and maybe give some what are some things that you feel like people have expected, or maybe even self-imposed expectations?
Yeah. So we started in ministry when I was 20, and so really young. And Jeff he had just turned 21, and so I think when you start that young, he was a youth pastor, right? Yep, a youth pastor and associate pastor. And so with that actually unique role, there was no one really else on staff that had that same role. And so when you look at church-wide calendar, we had 2 calendars.
Yeah.
And I worked a different job full time. So we really had 3 calendars we were trying to mesh. And everyone had expectations of you need to get X, Y, and Z done from, my job, which is fair. And then from Jeff's job, which is also fair. The first 2 years were tough because we looked at, I'm trying to think of like a specific expectation. Just if we had events on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And I would say that would be an easy one of we're having this event. It's at 8:00 and you need to be there to help set up and to facilitate it, which is fine, right? That's part of his job.
But how many Saturdays did you have in a row that happened?
So Jeff could answer that better, but I want to say it was in the teens, I think.
Yeah, there's
and
quite
so
a few.
we had, up-teen amount of days where we had no day off. And so I would say that was our tipping point of realizing, okay, expectations are fair, and some of them are job-related, and some of them are self-imposed. Mm-hmm. Some are personal. But we were, 2-3 years into ministry and just like running into burnout consistently and just exhausted. And we had a little at home at that point, we're 3 years in, and we were just going, we can't do this. Mm-hmm. I don't know if, for me, I was like, I don't know if I was meant to do ministry. Like, this isn't good. Like, I feel like I'm failing. And that's where that perfectionist kind of like hit a wall, because you feel like you're failing. And so we learned early on to have those honest conversations with our bosses above us, saying, okay, if these are your expectations that you've placed on us, then I need, let's take Thursday. I'm not going to come in Thursday because it's a salary job. That doesn't necessarily mean we work consistently 70 hours a week. And that could mean, different projects that we're working on or whatever. But we have one day off together. Cam works Monday through Friday, and Jeff works Sunday through sometimes Saturday. And so it was like we just didn't have a day off, and it was killing us. And so we just learned, like, we can still meet those above us, their expectations, but we have limits, and we need to be honest with what those limits are, mm-hmm. because then we run so much better. And so then that kind of really started to have healthy expectations, and like, this is what we can give. We want to meet your expectations, but also we need a day off somewhere. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we're going to start creeping into that perfectionism again, and we can't do that, and we're not going to run well. So yeah, I would say some of them were just job-related expectations. Some of them were personal. We wanted to have a certain amount of time with our family and our kids and do these things with our kids, and we weren't meeting those, and you feel like you're failing as a parent, and you're just like, this is not working. Mm-hmm. But when we changed that and we really like honed in on what healthy expectations were and how do we manage them, we run so much better and have had little burnout since.
And I've seen you have compassion for people who are working on your staff at Maple Grove and saying, mm-hmm. hey, you can't be this busy, because mm-hmm. you've experienced that burnout too. Yeah. So helping others find healthy boundaries. Expectations and boundaries. How about you?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the nose. Really keeping your Sabbath sacred, mm-hmm. and making sure that you set those hard boundaries, and the expectation is the only thing that we say yes to is family. And, we're trying to figure that out right now when we're a new family. But if you have that in place, I feel like that can really translate to the years to come. I think more what I got to see is the expectation of family that isn't involved in ministry, or that doesn't really have a clue of what being in a ministry's mm-hmm. family looks like. And so I think the expectation that came there is everything's still the same. This is just a job, mm-hmm. or this is mm-hmm. just you marrying into a family. And, with that came setting boundaries with them and having understanding. And they got to see insight into what that looked like, mm-hmm. into what that meant, where I can't answer the phone on a Monday night, even though you're off during that time, or mm-hmm. And so it's just a lot of understanding and coming to a place where you can be honest and have those conversations, even if they might be hard. So then their expectation isn't it's reality now. It goes from this expectation that you can't hit to, okay, I have more understanding about it, and I get to see what you get to walk through. So
that's a good segue into my next question. Talk about how the tension from the way you're raised and growing up, how ministry has maybe put a little tension on your family of origin.
Yeah, so for me, as I said, my family is in a different state. And so getting to see them, typically when families go and visit, is during the holidays, is during times when they have off. And for us, those are our go seasons. Those are our sprinting seasons. And so with that, like I said, has come a lot of understanding, but it did cause a lot of tension with, well, we only get to go out there on a long weekend where we have to take off on a Sunday. And if we go out there, it might be from a Thursday to Saturday because Sunday we have service bright and early. And so those have just been some things that we get to manage and that we've grown from too.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, I mentioned earlier that my dad's a small business owner and has been my whole life practically. Similar, not in ministry roles. So then when we became in ministry, you're managing two very different calendars, I mean, myself included. And so I think some of the tensions even came from me of like, I feel like we're living at church. And there's seasons for that. But how do we manage that to where we're still doing our job with excellence while we also have other priorities, and what does that look like? Holidays became even crazier because some holidays fall on a Sunday or on a weekend. And so we're working.
And Christmas Eve is Christmas Eve every year.
Yeah. And so I've learned to enjoy the chaos, honestly, if I had to like pinpoint it, because I think the perfection in me earlier on was like frustrated that, some family members would get more time than others, and tensions were felt between two families. How do we manage this? And, we work at a different location, so although we're all working, we don't all see each other either. And so we the holiday sometimes feels like it's 10 hours and that's it. It was hard feeling like I was always failing, or, one side maybe more frustrated than others, or maybe they were both frustrated, or we tried to appease both sides and we were the ones that were really sad. And we just learned to enjoy the chaos, and sometimes being okay with some family members or even ourselves being upset that it wasn't the way that we wanted it to go. Because ministry is not 9 to 5. And it's the moment I realized that, I think I just relaxed a little bit. And it was like, okay, this is fine, but you also came home at 3. Like, I couldn't have done that at my other job either. And so just trying not to analyze them together because they're so different. And you can also play ministry is people's lives. I have to be there. I have to be present. And what if I'm not? God will bring other people. And learning to be okay with that brings that down a little bit, to where you can just kind of do it how you can do it, and that's enough.
That's so good. Well, what advice do you have for ministry families, whether they're vocational ministers or lay leaders in the church, as we're closing? Any last thoughts and advice for ministry families?
I think just remember you're people too, and you're called to a position, but what you're called to first is to steward your family well and to serve that ministry first. And so whatever you're asked to do, I would just remember that family goes first, and don't allow it to take the place of what you do. So.
Yeah, similar. I would say that just because someone does ministry one way doesn't mean that's how you have to do it. There's no perfect way to do it. There's no God made you to be you, and you're the only one who can do that. So just realizing that ministry is going to look different for you to do it than maybe the person next to you, and that's okay. And that God comes first. That if you're not feeling yourself first, you're still missing the boat. And if you're married, then your marriage comes second, and your family comes after that, and ministry comes after that. And there's times where it may feel like it's getting a little out of order. That's normal. But then just regrouping, allowing yourself that space at Sabbath to regroup, and to put those things back in order, because that's what helps ministry flow well. And sometimes God will use you when you least expect it. So just be okay with that too. I mean, there are times where I feel like my hair was in a messy bun, and I showed up at Target and someone said something, and I was just like, just, give them an encouraging word. And they're like, that meant so much. I'm like, I'm so glad, but I wish I was dressed nicer, but it's fine. Just be willing to be yourself, and that's enough. So I would say that's kind of the 2 cents.
It's so funny. If you want to see people, go to Target. If you don't want to see people, go to Walmart, because they don't look you in the eye.
Yeah.
Like, no one looks you in the eye at Walmart. So I'm like,
Good to
it's
know.
so funny. That's my little advice for everyone. But thank you so much for jumping into the podcast today, and even just being in our family and jumping into the chaos sometimes of ministry and making a difference for people. Appreciate it. And thank you for listening to the Shepherd Hearted Leader podcast today. What a great conversation, and just a sneak peek into the lives of ministry families. And so we would love to hear from you. If you like this episode, please like and share with others. Leave a comment. We always love hearing comments from you. And we'll leave a couple links in the description, one to Chy's message that she preached, and another to Jeff's podcast, where you can get kind of some more insight on the ministry family. And until next time, keep leading well.